NutriCast.
There's a change happening in the way we live, the way we work, the way we spend our money and make our decisions. We are evolving to be more conscious in our actions in a way that serves the world and makes it a better place. Welcome to the Ethical Evolution. The Ethical Evolution podcast is brought to you by Ethical Change Agency. I'm Bindi, I'm the founder, and my mission is to help ethical entrepreneurs and holistic healers to find their voice through spiritual coaching and podcasting. I'm honoured to bring you the stories of those who create change through healing, kindness, innovation, purpose, and spirit. Understanding that to create collective change, we need to be the change. It all begins with us. This episode is a special requested episode for a story that really needs to be told. For privacy reasons, my guest will remain anonymous, but will be known as Chris. When a friend reached out to me to ask me if I would like to share his story, I knew this was a conversation that needed to be had and could provide release, value, and understanding in a situation that poses ethical questions and a path to peace. Chris was the recipient of a double lung and heart transplant after a lifetime of health issues and has since been diagnosed with an aggressive cancer which is making its way toward his brain. He made the brave decision to refuse radiation treatment and surgery and has been approved to participate in voluntary assisted dying in Queensland. This conversation is not an easy one, but one that Chris bravely navigates in the hope that others learn the true value of life and to assist others facing a similar situation. At times, it is raw and confronting, and if you or someone you know is impacted by this conversation, help is available. Speak to someone today. Here in Australia, Lifeline is available 24 hours a day on 13 11 14. Welcome, Chris, to the Ethical Evolution.
Hi, Bindi. Thanks for having me.
Now, this episode is a bit of a special one, and Chris, we're going to share your story today and where you're at in life currently, but I'm going to let you tell the story if you can tell us who you are and why you're here with us today.
Yeah, sure. My name's Chris. I am, among many things, diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I'm on the show to share my experience and the lead up to voluntary assisted dying.
So, Chris, take us back to where your health journey started now. From my understanding, from what you and your friend Renee has told me, is that you've always had a bit of a struggle with your health. Tell us the backstory on that.
I was born with congenital heart disease. First catheter was at 2 years old. They diagnosed common ventricle transposition. I've been in and out hospitals pretty much my entire life. So first open heart surgery was at 8 years old. And way back then was probably the first time they started talking about transplant. So, they gave me back then they had no idea, but they kind of told my parents, well, we're 13 years old. If he makes it to then, that's a good innings. And I made it to 40. And there was a lot of hospital visits in between that, pulmonary embolisms and all sorts of stuff. Age 40, I had my first stroke, and by the third one, we were really pushing to get on the transplant list. And transplant happened. It was actually harder to get on the transplant list than to get the transplant. I guess I was probably pretty urgent by then. So I had a full heart and double lung transplant, and with that came a whole new world of medications and hospital visits like I never knew was going to happen. Yeah, there's a lot to transplant that isn't discussed prior. But yeah, one of the side effects is from the medications of having no immune system is cancers grow really quickly. So what started as a little red dot on my lip was biopsied and tested, came back as an SCC, and I had it cut out in October 22. 3 times they cut that out, and the 3rd time they took half my top lip, the whole Cupid's bow. They offered radiation at the time, and I kind of know what's involved with radiation, having other friends go through it. And it's not something I ever wanted to do, so I refused. That's the first time, 46 years of ever refusing anything medical, which was a big decision. And they did more tests and scans and said, yep, we got the margins. They were happy enough. So I was happy that I'd made the right choice by not having the radiation. But they did say highly likely to come back, and within 12 months, or just over 12 months, it started coming back. And October 2023, they started taking biopsies and scans and MRIs and PET scans, CT scans. I'm surprised I don't glow in the dark. I had so many scans. I mean, and that's been my whole life. Every time you go for a clinic appointment, it's automatic X-ray. But yeah, it came back. I was referred to a plastic surgeon's team, and they started discussing cutting it out. Yeah, they started discussing kind of how far it had gone and what was involved. And it was just after Christmas, early January this year. They wanted to get straight in and do surgery. And then I ended up with COVID for the 3rd time, which gave me a 2-week grace where they did more PET scans, CT scans, and between the various teams, because there's not just one team that you speak to when you do this stuff. It was every day going to different appointments to see different teams. You got the plastics, you got the ENT, you should have the anaesthetist, the radiation team, and everything like that. And I started joining together what was actually involved. And they told me that it wasn't just my top lip, it had gone up my cheek, right cheek, and it was in under my eye and back through to my brain. Well, 5 millimeters off my brain. So they class this as stage 1. Had it been the extra 5 millimeters, that's stage 2. And they call it curable because it's not in the bone. And at that stage, they can just keep cutting until they think they get it all. So over a period of 2 or 3 weeks and many discussions with my wife, it was very overwhelming, the amount of information and just how invasive this surgery is. And I got to the point where I had to stop and ask myself, what don't I want? Because at that stage, all I could see was more and more surgeries, more and more time in hospital, more and more pain, more and more painkillers to stop the pain. And I came to the point where I couldn't do it. Having lived a life of that, I couldn't couldn't make the decision to go ahead with it. It came down to quality over quantity. And once I started getting my head around that decision, I started to realize how Western society seems to value quantity over quality. And this last possibly 6 months, I would rather be at home with my family, with my wife and daughter, rather than in and out of hospital, probably more in hospital than out of hospital. And yeah, that's where I came to.
So, Chris, if we step back to the transplant, I mean, that kind of transplant for anyone is a massive undertaking without all the other challenges that you've been through.
Yeah.
And to, like, how long did you have to wait before so you got on the transplant list? How long did you have to wait till you actually had the surgery and had the transplant?
It took 9 weeks to get on the list, and it took 7 weeks to get the transplant.
So that's pretty quick considering most people's journeys are quite a lot longer, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. There's people in the Facebook groups that have waited more than 12 months and are still waiting. Transplant in itself has many ethical questions about what they do, how they treat you, but more so what they tell you leading into it. I mean, it's the same with the cancer. From my perspective now, they were always giving the best case scenario, and that's very rarely the case. No, not many people get the dream run. So transplant itself, I had a bacteria, I think it's called Burkholderia cepacia or something like that. There'd been an outbreak on the Gold Coast a couple of weeks earlier. It kills CF patients. And they said to me, oh, lucky you weren't a CF patient, that would have killed you. Then a few days later, that was 2017, so that was Aussie killer flu. I got that from a nurse on the ward. So back up to ICU. And then day 10, I was meant to go home. Fitting well, walking a kilometre up and down 2 flights of stairs. Like, this is 10 days after you've had someone else's heart and lungs put into you. And yeah, I was better than I'd ever been before. And the morning that I was meant to leave, my sternum popped open and I started using brown stuff.
Oh, no.
So back up to surgery and back into ICU for a week, staring at the ceiling while they cleaned golden staph out of my sternum.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, 10 days turned into 7 weeks.
Wow.
And it happens all the time. Like what you see on the news a couple of months ago with the fungus infection, that's not isolated. It happens all the time.
And really, it for those of us that are fit and well listening to you, Chris, you know, we really take our immunity for granted. When you've had a transplant, the tiniest thing can really knock you out, can't it?
Yeah. Yeah. The start of COVID, it's not PG rating, but I was shitting my dacks.
Yep.
And the impact of COVID and the way it was killing people overseas, I knew that that hit Australia sooner, I wouldn't have been here. Most of the transplant group wouldn't have been here. And people have become pretty relaxed about everything surrounding COVID, but there's still transplant recipients, friends of mine that, yeah, they get it now. They're still in hospital. There's still quite a few of them. There was one last week, the week before, she passed away. COVID's still killing people.
Yeah.
We just don't hear about it as much.
It's incredible. And, you've been through so much. So right now, at the time of recording, it's April 2024. And if my calculations are right, you're currently 47. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah.
A little bit younger than myself. So based on your diagnosis with the cancer in January this year, so that's only 4 months ago, the prognosis they gave you then was what?
You won't see Christmas. That was the only timeline they gave me.
And with all that you've been through, like, what was your initial reaction to that? Like, you've been to hell and back several times. Like, what was your reaction at that point?
Um, it yeah, it hit home because this time I knew it's for real this time. I guess I'd been through it in November 2018. We had a holiday in New Zealand. I went to see my sister, and we came back, and I had another bacteria in my lungs, and they were treating it as fungus because that's what it presented as. And it took 4 months, and I went into early lung rejection. I ended up with CLAD. I ended up doing a stem cell trial, and they eventually stabilized it, but they finally found a dead specimen of this bacteria and asked me, have I been wild boar shooting? I'm
Wow.
like, no. That was the first, those few months of not knowing what was going on, knowing that I was in lung rejection. That was the first real time where I thought this was the end. And we started having palliative care conversations then. But they found what it was, and they changed the medications, antibiotics, and I pulled through that. But my lung capacity is sat at 30% for the last 6 years.
So currently now, you're nearly 4 months into that diagnosis. What's a day in your life currently like for you, Chris? Like, what's your quality of life like currently?
Very scaled back. And it has been for quite a while, even before the cancer diagnosis. My physical ability to be able to do day-to-day stuff has slowly been degrading. But again, I'd rather be at home with my family than in the hospital. Yeah, doing the same thing, laying around.
Yeah. So with all of the diagnosis and the decisions that you had to make, so you decided to explore voluntary assisted dying, which became legal for eligible participants in January 2023 in Queensland.
Queensland, yes.
Yeah. Now that's not legal everywhere. So we're currently in Queensland. So you explored that. What kind of conversations happened to get you to that point of where you went, I want to have that control myself and make the call on when it's time to go?
Yeah, that was around January when we were in and out of the main hospital, speaking to the plastics and ENT and all the other specialists, and there was a sense of no control. And I knew one way or another this cancer was going to kill me. I mean, somehow I survived everything else, but the gut doesn't lie, and gut instinct says this is the one. And conversations and support with my wife. we've both been very open about it since it became legal, and it was like, wow, thank God for that.
Mm.
Because I certainly don't want to be laying in a hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, praying for death,
Mm.
because they can't control the pain that I'm in, as happened, with that golden staff.
Mm.
I don't ever want to go through that again. And anyone who's had a serious illness or surgery gone wrong or something like that, who's had that level of pain, no one wants to deal with that
Mm.
any more than 24, 48 hours. And you're praying for death yourself. So this was part of the conversation that we started having is, what am I prepared to go through? What am I not prepared to go through? And now that it's legal, how do we secure the option?
Mm. So there's a bunch of criteria you need to meet to even be able to do it, right? So one, you have to be obviously an Australian citizen and within Queensland.
Yep.
Two, you have to, isn't it? You need to have a physician who will sign off on it. That's another part.
Yeah, at that stage, once I refused the surgery and refused radiation, because that would be the package deal. If you're having the surgery, you're getting radiated this time.
Mm.
So once I refused that and they accepted my decision, then they gave me the referral to palliative care because it would be terminal, and they'd already said you won't make it to Christmas. So once I was with palliative care, I had the conversation, the first consult with them, and I went in there and said, look, I had described the pain that I was in with after the golden staff and the pec flat recovery that I had.
Mm.
So I don't ever want to be in that kind of pain again. If I get to that stage, I want to be able to call it. And that's what it's been based off, is not time, is pain,
Mm.
and pain management. And so once I described that, he said, that's fine, you qualify. And then it was more so the legal obligations that he had to let me know about,
Mm.
and how it all works, how I want to take it.
Yep.
Whether I want to, it gets to the point where I want to mix it up as a drink and take it myself,
Mm-hmm.
or administered by my wife, which she didn't agree to. She's like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I kind of expected that, and that's fine. So we've chosen for it to be IV administered by the palliative care doctor,
Mm-hmm.
which is probably the more sensible way it should be administered. There was an incident a month or 2 months ago, where I think it was the husband, had the wife's medication. He took it himself.
Oh no.
So I'm sure there'll be some questions and some changes around the administration, so that stuff doesn't happen again.
Because I mean, in some cases, they can just go to the pharmacy and pick up the medication and take it, and that's it, right?
No,
No.
not in Queensland. It's got to be, once it's signed off, you have three consults. The first one, describe it, approve it.
Yep.
The second one, you with a different doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You're given the forms that you need to read. You take them home, read them, and you need two people to sign them. They can be friends. They can't be family. They can't be doctors, they can't be any beneficiaries of your estate.
Mm.
And once they're signed, I think it's a Form 4 and a Form 8. Once they're signed, then we just scan them and email them back to the doctor.
Yeah.
He submits them. And then you have your final consult where they organise for the medications to be sent to. There's only one pharmacy in Queensland. I think it's like a warehouse pharmacy. They will send the medications there until you're ready to take them, and then they'll be sent out to the administering doctor, I believe.
Right. Okay.
But the people who take and will administer themselves, it still goes to that same warehouse pharmacy, and I'm not sure. It must be sent out or posted out
Mm.
to the residents. We didn't go down that path, so I'm not 100% sure about that.
And I guess two other parts of the puzzle as well, Chris, is, one, you need to have that state of mind to be able to make that decision for yourself before you get approved as well. But then there's also, as you've hinted to there, that there's no coercion in the agreement either, that you're not being talked into doing it because, say, someone wants your estate or whatever it might be. So that's all part of it as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a hotly contested topic with on the Facebook groups.
Yeah.
A lot of people said the doctors aren't legally allowed to bring it up. And I asked them about that, and they said, well, if the patient is talking about it without actually saying it, we can offer that. But generally, they'll let the patient ask.
Yep.
But yeah, of course, they can't coerce or anything like that. It's solely the patient's decision. And you also have the choice not to take it.
So once you got approved and you'd made the decision and you and your wife had all the discussions on how you were going to go about it and what your final decisions were, I'm sure that your family may not have been 100% happy with your decisions. Am I right?
Correct. Well, I think it's more of a shock. I mean, it's just stages of emotion or conversations like that. Generally, when people hear news like that, your first stage is shock, and reactions are big. And so I ended up sending an email, especially to extended family, to let them know what was going on. And that gave the opportunity for them to read it, absorb it, understand what was going on. But it gave them the time to have that shock moment without blurting it out at you as I had, because I mean, no one wants a close family member to pass away. And there was a few reactions with immediate family of, no, you've got to die trying, which I kind of expected. I mean, I spent 46 years doing that. And yeah.
And there's kind of a philosophy, like you were saying before, in Western society, that, it's about quantity, not quality, and also, save a life at all costs. And, it's that quality of life, which kind of leads me to the question, Chris, for you, like, what are you going to do with the rest of the time you have left? What do you really want to do?
I'm doing it. My sisters, after initially telling them, they were both like, "Well, what's on the bucket list?
Mm.
Let's go and tick some stuff off." I'm like, "Well, I don't really have a bucket list. I don't want anything. I don't need anything. The only thing I crave is quality time,
Yeah.
which we don't have enough of. Only when people are in these situations that they realize how short life is, and what matters most is connection. And yeah, it's difficult to talk about this stuff. And there's generations that can't talk about emotions as openly as this. And it's sad. Yeah, I think the generation that's coming through, I mean, I know I worked on myself most of my life, trying to break cycles. And my daughter has emotional maturity beyond her years. She understands what's going on.
How old's your daughter at the moment, Chris?
She's 11. Yeah.
And
We've had the conversations. She's been involved with the conversations from the start. And when the surgeons were talking about cutting out my top lip and grafting it, and then cutting out the nerve up under my eye and drilling holes through my skull and chasing the nerve back through the brain. And I asked her, like, would it disturb her? Yeah, would it be disturbing seeing me with half my face regrafted? And because I'm on immunosuppressants, if the grafts don't take, and they'll just cut all that out and hope for the best. And her response was, I don't care, Dad. I just don't want you to be in pain.
Wow, 11 years old.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I'm like, well, yeah.
So does she understand what's happening to Daddy?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's like anyone. The more you hide, the more they want to know.
Yeah.
And it's far easier to be straight up, let them know what's going on, and support them with their emotions. Because, I mean, they're going to have just as big as emotions as we do.
And Chris, like looking at your timeline now, you and I were talking the other day and you were mentioning June, July potentially is your estimate currently.
Yeah.
That's not that far away, mate.
I'm well aware of that. Yeah. And it hurts.
Are you at peace with your decision?
Yes. But it's a constant reminder. I mean, I'll wake up some mornings and I'm like, what's this dream? And 6-year-old me still says, I don't want to die. I know I've got this big surgery or big something to go through, and there's always been something throughout my life. What's next? What's next? But there's the overwhelming, I don't know whether it's a fear or what, but yeah, I don't want to die. I want to be here just like everyone else.
And for people listening, they're probably thinking, oh, what kind of support are you getting? You've had a lot of counselling and therapy through this whole ordeal, haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah. And everyone needs it. Everyone should have someone to be able to talk through stuff. And it's not from, I think the misconception, especially with psychologists and psychiatrists and all that stuff, is people go there to get fixed. But that's not their job.
No.
They're there to support you to work through your emotions. Our parents' generation, I think they find it very hard to even acknowledge their own emotions, let alone work through them. So they're looking for the quick fix, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you've got close friends that you can talk to and share those emotions, there's someone to support and understand. That's more what it's about.
So,
I mean, that alone will bring your friendships closer.
Yeah,
and more
absolutely.
meaningful.
Yeah. And you've been heavily involved in, Facebook groups and communities in terms of, the transplant community and also voluntary assisted dying.
Yeah.
What advice would you leave for them, Chris, if they're facing a similar scenario that you are?
Would have to be, step back and look at the whole situation. Because your doctors, your specialists, when they're doing stuff like this, they're always going to give you a best case scenario. And in my case, well, with this cancer, it was first put to me as a 6 to 8 hour surgery, 2 teams, 10 days recovery. Yeah, off you go. But in my situation and scenario, I know I have no immune system, and I know that I now have from the medications partial kidney failure, partial liver failure. My lungs are at 30% capacity. Yeah, there's so much else going on that best case scenario is not even close for me. And that was the hardest bit to acknowledge at the start.
And for families also that are part of that decision, what would you say to them?
Be there to support, support the person's decision. I mean, it's their decision. I mean, the alternative, and I know it went through my head, and I emailed my psychologist at the time and I said, look, this is out of control. Once I started getting all the information, I said I've never had thoughts of suicide, but this is now going through my head. There's no shame in voicing that if that's what's coming up, but you need to be able to express it and get the help and follow that through. And it was about taking control back. And the voluntary assisted dying, it's not something I want to do, but it is an option because I know that when the pain gets too much, I don't want to be living in that kind of pain either.
And I guess it kind of answers the question that's always been in the back of my mind for you, Chris, is when will you know it's time?
When I'm laying in bed and everything hurts, my lip hurts, I mean, if it's in my brain, I'm sure I'm going to get migraines like you've never had before. Um, there was another nodule came up, and it's actually quite big now, and that was in a minor lymph node. And the specialist said, or the plastic surgeon said, after much arguing and trying to convince me to go ahead with the surgery, when I gave him the final no, he sat back and said, "Leo, look, I'll level with you. I wouldn't do it either."
Mm.
And then he explained that that extra nodule is in the minor lymph, and it's most likely down my neck. So they would need to take all the lymph out of my neck and radiate that as well.
Mm.
And if it's already down there, then it's a hop, skip, and a jump away from all your other vital organs.
Mm.
The heart, the lungs. Lungs are probably the closest. Get that cancer in your lungs, it's not going to take long.
And this has happened so rapidly for you, Chris. Like, we're not talking months, we're talking a matter of weeks.
Yeah,
A matter of weeks, the speed of this thing.
yeah, that's the price.
Mm. So when we look at what you leave behind, what would you say your legacy is and the message you want to leave?
I guess it's going to be different for everyone, but for me, it's become about quality and spending quality time, having that connection. The quantity doesn't cut it. And as a society, everyone wants more, more of everything. And the reality is, yeah, more time. What's the right word? More.
It's really the lesson that, time is just so valuable, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, but when your time's up, you got to acknowledge your time's up.
Mm.
And I mean, there's so many people in accidents and stuff like that. They don't get the opportunity, and they've been so busy with their life,
Mm.
they haven't bothered to connect on a deeper level with their family. And I can be grateful for that.
Mm. Mm. It's
Yeah.
such a huge lesson for so many people in today's life. I think, like, we get so tied up in the little things that we don't see the little things are the big things.
Yeah.
And such a valuable lesson for us all, Chris. Is there anything else you want to share?
Just in regards to that last bit, one of our parents' generation, they talk about leaving an inheritance,
Mm.
and it's really struck home with me that it's not about leaving stuff. Like, you can't take that with you,
Mm.
and the stuff doesn't matter. But when they're gone, what you're really left with is the memories. And yeah, people need to be leaving memories, or like inheritance should be connection, and right from childhood, because as kids grow up, it's what they remember from their childhood, from 5 and 6. That's what they take in to adulthood and remember your parents as,
Mm.
remember their parents as. So yeah,
And this is it, isn't it, Chris? The purpose
change the perspective.
of life and, the meaning of it. I know we're getting deep here, but, it's really to cultivate those experiences and those memories rather than stuff, you know?
Yeah.
We don't need the material stuff. It's not going to go with us, you know? And it's not the thing that brings us true happiness either.
Nope. All connectedness.
Mm.
And that's what we crave.
Yep. It's what we're wired for. Chris, I got to thank you for your bravery. You're an incredible man.
I try, day at a time.
Now, I normally ask guests a really big question, and for someone like you, this may be very similar to the last question I asked you. And, you know, the theme of the show is, what's the change you like to see in the world and how can we bring it to life?
Yeah, the change we all need is more compassion. Compassion for others. I mean, there's still so much divide. We're all pink inside, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Chris. Mate, look, I want to thank you for trusting me to share your story and for being a part of the ethical evolution.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a hard conversation. Yeah, the voluntary assisted dying conversations, yeah, they need to happen. People need to know that you don't need to live in the physical pain that people are living in, and for the mental pain and the emotional pain that people are living. Go and talk to someone.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Ethical Evolution podcast. If you're ready to be the change and would love to work with me on finding your voice through spiritual coaching or creating your own podcast with impact, visit ethicalchangeagency.com. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's growing every day with great content and highlights you may not have heard on the podcast. In addition, please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or Apple, and why not leave a 5-star review? If you're not following me on social media, you can find me at Ethical Change Agency on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook and YouTube, and at DJ Bindi on TikTok and Instagram. If you're interested in diving deeper into the ethical evolution with me, I've created a membership program that allows me to bring you more in-depth exclusive content without relying on paid ads. My goal is to deliver members way more value than the cost of the subscription. Benefits include Ask Me Anything episodes. I've interviewed hundreds of people from around the world, so imagine what you could ask. Access exclusive bonus content only for members that focuses on the downloads I get through my conversations that include actionable tips. Support Ethical Change Agency and the Ethical Evolution podcast on its mission to amplify change makers who make the world a better place. Access to global connections who can help you make greater impact in the world. Meditate with me and discounted spiritual coaching or podcast consulting with me at 15% off. That value alone pays for your membership. For only $7 a month or $70 a year, you can access all these benefits of an Ethical Evolution Emergence membership. If you want to learn more and access these benefits, head on over to ethicalchangeagency.com.
Electricast. Welcome to the Candle Power Hour. Come with us backstage behind the scenes of show business spanning over 4 decades and bringing you the experiences that can only be told by the people who were there.
Our guests are from the A-list, the F-list, and everyone in between. Get set for some of the most insane, hilarious, and inspiring stories you will ever hear.
I'm Mercury.
And I'm Diego.
Your hosts for the Candle Power Hour.
Welcome to Sarah Talk Solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, you've tuned into a bit of a different type of show. I'm Sarah B and I'm your host. You can find me on my IG, which is Aussie_Sarah_LA. I talk about amazing, relevant conversations and topics and what functions that goes on in this magical, wonderful, wonderful city of the City of Angels. my IG, which is Aussie_Sarah_LA.
Electricast. Electricast.